Hey everyone, Paul Richmond here. I am traveling, as you can tell by the lovely hotel art on display behind me, and so I'm gonna answer some of your questions that you asked me on social media. Laura Elizabeth wants to know, how do you deal with family and friends who have a difficult time understanding that art is work and not a leisure activity that you can just do some other time? Well, I've always been pretty lucky. Most of the people in my life are really supportive and understand that art is more than just a hobby for me. But I do think it's kind of funny. A lot of times, you know, if I spend like a full day in the studio or something and I go and talk with people who are not artists, one of the common things they always say is, that must just be so relaxing. That sounds so relaxing. And I don't know, maybe for some people it is, but for me, making art can be kind of stressful sometimes, or it can be really intense. It's not a relaxing thing. I kind of want to like pull my hair out sometimes. You know, I'm sure compared to some people's super stressful jobs, maybe it is kind of relaxing, but to me that just kind of like undermines it just a little bit, and I think that's sort of an interesting, kind of funny way to look at it, because it's the opposite of what it is for me. Jackie Sanborn wants to know, do you ever paint naked? Well, Jackie, no. I think it's very important for people to always stay dressed and be proper gentlemen. If you don't wear pants, then that's just like a desperate call for attention, and that's the opposite of who I am. Oh, excuse me a second, phone's ringing. Hello. Christopher Cropper wants to know, how did you become so successful as an artist? Well, Christopher, I would just say I'm still working on that, but one of the things that I do is I'm not ever afraid to put myself out there and let people know what it is I'm doing. I know so many talented artists who are so shy and they never want to let anybody see their work. And I think that there's kind of this misconception that if you're good enough, you can just sort of sit back and great opportunities will come your way. But you know, that's certainly at least not been the experience that I've had. The stuff that has come along for me a lot of times has been because I've, you know, reached out for it, or I've contacted people. If there was something I wanted, I let people know, and I got in touch with people who could help make it happen. So you have to be your biggest advocate. That, I guess, would be my suggestion. Don't think that if you're talented enough, then this is just gonna all come your way. You have to be the one that's aggressively out there seeking opportunities and putting your work in front of the people who can help get you where you wanna go. Renita Brown wants to know, who was the first person you ever drew a picture of? I would have to say that's probably Snow White. She was my hero when I was a kid. I wanted to grow up and be Snow White, so I drew hundreds of pictures of her every day. Scott Fullerton wants to know, what's your favorite color palette to work with and any colors you can't stand? Well, pink is my favorite, and the color that I can't stand is that color that you get when you mush too many of the colors on your palette together and it kind of turns this like baby shit green. That happens way too often, and usually that just has to go in the garbage. Okay, Vivian von Brokenheimen, who is my drag queen friend, took advantage of this opportunity to ask, the seemingly new rage is artists painting with their member. Is that something you've ever tried or considered? Wink. Well, Vivian, actually, you know, I do try to stay on top of trends, and so I figured I would go ahead and test that one out on my painting that I did of you. Hope you like it. Carrie Garner asks, as a gay man, what is the scariest situation you have ever been in? Well, since I am extra gay, I can think of several stories, but I'll tell you one. My husband and I were taking a vacation. We were staying kind of at this cabin out in the woods, and we went into town. There was just a little diner in this small town, and I was sitting there wearing some sort of like mesh belly shirt with jewels on it, you know, as one does when they vacation, and just blathering away about Madonna's new concert tour, as I recall. And suddenly I noticed that Dennis was looking a little bit nervous, and he was kind of signaling for me to shut up, and he was like, just eat, just hurry. And so I looked around, and the place was full of these big burly men wearing like fatigues and with big guns, because apparently it was hunting season. And I think that Dennis was worried that we were going to become, you know, the next target. A lot of questions about the member. Carrie Garner comes back with another question. When you met Ron Jeremy, did you see his member? No. When I met Ron Jeremy, we were at the memorial service for Tammy Faye Baker in Palm Springs. I had done a painting of her. I think Tammy Faye is awesome. So we went out there, and no, he was very dignified. In fact, he was playing classical piano with his hands for all of us at that event. It was quite an interesting mixed crowd. It was him, Larry King, Cloris Leachman. We were all kind of hanging out in this living room of her manager's house, and I got to unveil my painting, and it was really kind of this awesome awesome experience that came out of nowhere when I was first starting out. So, but no, he was a nice guy. I did get a nice photo with him and Dennis that we will always cherish. Connie Bailey says, the wonderful abstract geometric patterns that weave through the layers of your paintings are fascinating and add so much depth. You can tell Connie's an author. Do you pre-plan them or do they emerge as you paint? A little bit of both. I do kind of like sketch out stuff ahead of time, but then I also really like to just kind of see what happens as I go. So it's a mix. I'm really trying not to overly control the process and sort of let the paint do what it wants to. Okay, oh, this is a tough one. Paulette Post Miller says, how do you define postmodern art and postmodern art? God, I feel like I'm back in art school, Paulette. I guess I would say that it was a sort of reaction to modernism, and so it was artists wanting to do something new and different, and that's where a lot of conceptual art and different forms of art like installation and video and stuff came out of that. You know, artists usually do some of their coolest stuff when they're trying to break from a tradition and go into a new direction. So that's sort of the term that's used to lump together all of those people who were kind of, you know, going against the trend of the time and trying to do something new. Derek McLean asks, how do you price art? I'm not sure how to word this question, probably because it's two questions. Oh geez, Derek, making me work tonight. How do you determine what to sell a piece for, and more philosophically, how do we appropriately put a price on artworks? Okay, those are good questions. My pricing, I kind of use a combination of things, the size primarily, but then also the subject matter, content, you know, all of those things sort of come into play, and I have kind of a standard formula for figuring out what my pricing is. A lot of people who are first starting out will ask this question. This can be like a big hurdle if you're just, you know, getting ready to maybe display your work for the first time and you're not sure what to sell it for. So I always tell people, don't undervalue it. You know, don't sell yourself short. If you've spent all this time creating something, you don't want to see it just, you know, be sold and get nothing for it. At the same time, you don't want to go too overboard the other extreme either, because one thing that you want to keep in mind, art collectors want to see your work increase in value over time. So if you start out selling your work for too much, and it doesn't sell and you decide you have to lower the price, that looks bad. That's the opposite of what you want. It's better to kind of start on the lower end and get a feel for your market. Maybe look and see what other comparable pieces are selling for, but start on the lower end if you're just beginning. And then as you sell, slowly and kind of incrementally increase your prices, because that's good for you and it's good for the people who are supporting you. Okay, Derek Williams, another Derek, asks, do you believe that it's easy for people to get inspiration for their own art? Explain. I think that inspiration can come from so many different places, but yet it can still be difficult to grab hold of sometimes. And one of the things that I always say when people ask me about, like, how do you get through, you know, creative blocks and things like that, a lot of times I think that if you try to force it too much, if you just like sit and wait for the perfect idea, that doesn't usually work for me. I have to be out and doing things and interacting with people and the world, and that's usually when I get what I think are my best ideas. But at the same time, I'm not one to sort of like wait for the perfect thing either. You know, if I am at my studio and I want to be painting, then I'm going to paint. And even if I don't have this divine inspiration, you know, I'll paint something. I'll just start working, because for me the best way to work through a creative block is just to start making something. It may not be great, it may not be, you know, ultimately like what I want to end up with, but if I can kind of just get the ball rolling, I feel like a lot of times that's when the good ideas come. Amy Barnett, who is your inspiration in the art world, and what's your favorite piece? Whoa, that's a tough question. I have no idea, and it depends a lot on the day, I guess. But I would say that probably my biggest inspiration is the lady who started teaching me art lessons when I was a little kid, Linda Regula. I started taking classes at her studio when I was 3.5 years old, and I'll never forget the impression it made on me when I first walked into her studio and her walls were lined floor to ceiling with her paintings, and I had never seen anything like that before. It was so colorful and intense, and I knew right then that was what I wanted to do. I was 3.5 years old, and here I am all these years later, and that is what I'm doing today. So I would say of all the people who've inspired me, that was probably the most important and significant one. Beth Sumner Darwin asks, how has your painting / art changed over the years? What are you moving toward? Well, hopefully it's changed for the better as I've worked and improved, hopefully. But you know, when I was a kid, I started out by painting a lot of like fairy tales and the things that were inspiring me and influencing me at that time. And to this day, paint the things that I love and am interested in. So I guess in that respect, it hasn't changed too much. The technique has certainly changed. And as far as where I'm going, I don't know. I mean, I'm not somebody that follows a real strict formula, unless I'm working on a specific show or a series or something. I like to kind of stay open and see where it might take me next. So I can't really tell you where I'm moving towards, except to say that, every day it's sort of a new challenge and it's exciting. I love what I do, and I am always trying to sort of push to a new level. I don't want to be an artist that just kind of keeps making the same thing over and over again, because I have rampant ADD and I would be so bored if that was the case. So I can't really say where I'm heading, but hopefully you will stick around and check it out with me and we'll both be surprised. Well, thank you for all the great questions. Sorry I didn't get to everyone's, but we will do this again, I promise. Go follow me on all the social media stuff, Facebook, Twitter, Tumblr, Instagram, all of it. And while you're at it, be sure to subscribe to me right here on YouTube, because we will do this again and I would love to hear from you. All right, talk to you later. Bye-bye. Losing my hand.
I'm losing my dignity.
Hi everyone, Paul Richmond here with Intern.
Hi.
I actually was just reading an article online that was talking about some of the steps that you could take